no grave for a liar. They say the desert keeps its secrets. Bury a truth out here, and the wind will cover it, the sun will bleach it, and the coyotes will sing over it till you forget it was ever there. But the desert never knew Marshal Ethan Cross. Ethan rode with a straight back and quiet hands, the kind a horse trusts. He had the long stare of a man who'd learned to measure distance in both miles and sins. Years ago, he'd put a marker on a hill for his brother, Jonah, wooden cross, no name, just a promise carved into the grain. When I find the man who did this, I'll lay him down right. It was a vow made on dust and blood, and vows like that crack a man's soul if you let him sit too long. The trail brought him to Dust Hollow, one street, two rows of false fronts, hooked like teeth beneath the red anvil of an Arizona sky. The town had a way of watching you through shutters and saloon smoke, and it watched Ethan like a dog watches a ratter. Ethan reined in before the livery. His horse, a bay, with a white sock and a stubborn heart, stamped twice, as if to say, "We're here, if you still want it." Ethan swung down, boots touching ground with the soft thud of a man who'd learned to step lighter than death. The sign on the church read Zion's Rest, letters hand-painted by somebody who wanted the Lord close and the world far. The preacher was new. Town talk said he'd come in just after the monsoon failed, when folks got dry in the throat and dry in the soul too. They called him Brother Cade, soft-spoken, kind-eyed, a Bible that looked worn as a saddle blanket. He'd taken to praying over the graves, and some said, the ledgers. Dust Hollow had more dead than coin, and a man of God who could balance both was a comfort. Ethan didn't believe in comfort, he believed in signs. And he followed a particular one, a rumor, as stubbornly as a wolf follows a wounded steer. Jed Black Vulture Carraway, outlaw and confidence man, was hiding under a collar, preaching on Sundays and stealing on weeknights. Carraway had a trick for every soul, a face for every room, and a talent for spotting the one thing you loved and reaching through your ribs to squeeze it. Ethan needed to see the preacher for himself. He pushed through the church's swinging doors and let the shadow swallow him. Inside was a coolness that felt like mercy. In the front pew, a woman knelt with her hands plaited so tight her knuckles shone. "My boy," she whispered, "my boy's gone with them men who sleep by day and ride by night." She didn't look up as Ethan passed. The preacher dipped his head, friendly as a neighbor. "If you come on Sunday, you can hear it again." Ethan turned and walked out into the day. He kept his face empty until the church door clicked behind him. Then he let breath out slow. The ghost he'd come hunting had just looked him in the eye and called him Marshal. And that voice, God help him, that voice could have been Jonah's on a quiet morning. Between the laughter and the trouble, Sheriff Boyd had a head like a stone and a conscience like a ledger. He listened to Ethan's piece, rubbed his jaw, and said, "You're telling me the preacher's an outlaw, Marshal. That a fact or a hunger? It's a scent," Ethan said. "And I've learned to trust those." Boyd shifted behind his desk, the chair creaking like an old ship. "I got hungry folks and dry well. That preacher's the only one who's brought peace to Dust Hollow since the bank pulled stakes. He's buried our dead decent and kept the drunks sober enough to wake up sorry. You set fire to that. Be sure it's for a righteous reason." Ethan set his hat on the desk with 2 fingers. "I buried my brother 2 years ago, put a cross on a hill. Then I found something the crows hadn't eaten, a whisper that Jed Carraway wasn't dead like folks said, that he'd slipped through a noose with a fake name and a fresh Bible. Since then, I've ridden after rumors. The last one led me here. Boyd sighed. Every man needs something to chase. Make sure yours ain't chasing you. He pushed a ledger forward. Stage was hit last month, week before the preacher came. And another hit 2 days ago, outside of town. Clean work. Killed the guard, spared the driver. Took only the strong boxes. Like professionals with a code. Where's the driver? Ethan asked. Livery. Name's Deke. Says he never saw faces, just kerchiefs and shadows. Ethan nodded and left. The sheriff's doubt sat on his shoulders, but it wasn't heavier than what he carried already. Doubt was a companion he knew by first name. At the livery, Deke stood oiling a harness, the kind of man trouble never chooses first. The small, the unremarkable, the ones come home at night and count their coins twice. He told Ethan the robbers were 4, maybe 5. One rode tall, one laughed like bone chimes, one smelled of church incense or fancy smoke. Sounds foolish, Marshal, Deke said, but I swear when he spoke I thought of Sundays. Ethan thanked him and stepped back into the light. The sun had slid an inch down the sky. Tusk Hollow went about its business with that slow determination frontier towns. Learn when time's a thing you spend careful. He found the saloon because every town wears its heart where the piano is. Inside, cards whispered and glasses clicked, and the piano man kept the room between sin and sorrow. Ethan took a shadowed table and watched. He watched long enough to see patterns form, who counted chips like hope, who dealt like a thief, who moved like someone aching to be elsewhere. She came in at dusk, broad brim hat, dust on her hem, eyes that didn't blink unless they wanted to. She was young enough to be brave and old enough to be angry. She sat at the bar and ordered coffee. Coffee in a saloon that prided itself on whiskey like a badge. That told Ethan something. He drifted over, quiet as smoke. Traveling? Late? Some places it's safer. She didn't turn. You were in the church earlier, he said, praying for a boy. Now she looked, and the anger in her eyes broke like a wave. My brother. They call them the night riders. They promise wages and bring danger. He thinks the preachers found him work on some cattle line, but the cows never come through town, Marshal. Only the guns. Name? Lena Pitts. My brother's Tommy. He's 16 and thinks the world can't touch him if he don't touch back. Ethan tipped his head. Where's the preacher meet him? Behind the church, after sundown. She put her hand on his arm, the way you take hold of a branch over white water. Please, I don't want a gunfight. I want my brother home. You and me both, Ethan said. It wasn't a lie. He just meant a different brother. There's a time of evening when the day turns its face away and the night hasn't decided who it's hunting yet. That was when Ethan stood in the alley behind Sion's Rest, flat against adobe, the smell of creosote in his throat and the scratch of a scorpion under the eave. He wasn't alone. He felt Lena in the shadow across the way, small and burning. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. Some griefs make light enough. Footsteps, soft, the kind of soft that comes from practice. A man slipped into the alley first, thin, nervous, a boy good at running. Tommy, behind him, another shape, then a third. And then the preacher, Brother Cade, moving like a shepherd who knows his lambs by name. Tommy, the preacher murmured, you understand the hours. You'll sleep by day, ride by night. Guard cargo that belongs to men we owe. Oh, Tommy said, trying on toughness like a too big coat. Brother Cade's smile was gentle. The town owes guides through many hands, son. These men, he nodded to the shadows, they'll teach you to ride sure. You keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your eyes open. And you give 10% back to Zion's rest, because the Lord's work never ends. Is the cargo cattle? Tommy asked. Brother Cade's face didn't change. Sometimes letters. Sometimes money that needs moving from places of danger to places of safety. And if the law asks? Tommy bloated. It was a young question, and it made Ethan's chest hurt. Then you tell the truth, the preacher said, the gentleness sliding over steel so smooth you could shave with it. You say you're a hired guard, because why? Ethan stepped out of the dark. Evening. Brother Cade. The men reached for their belts. Brother Cade didn't. Marshal, he said, and his voice was a warm hand on a cold morning. I'm counseling boys to honest work. You think I'll miss your shadow? Honest. Ethan's mouth made a curve that wasn't a smile. I've seen honest. It walks with smaller boots, Tommy stammered. I ain't done nothing. You ain't, Ethan said. Yet. He looked at the preacher. Tell the boy the truth. Tell him you ain't a shepherd. Tell him your name's Jed Caraway. The alley went very still. The men's hands crept slower, because names are bullets, and this one had found its mark. Brother Cade lowered his head, fraction, almost like he was praying. When he spoke, the warmth was gone, and the steel remained. You have me confused with a ghost, Marshal. Maybe, Ethan said, but ghosts don't smell like cigarillo smoke from a San Angelo tobacconist. They don't laugh like bone chimes when a man spills a drink. And they don't ride tall on a roan with a split ear. I've been behind you for 2 years, Caraway. I listened to the voices you borrowed. You're good. You almost had me in that church. Almost. The preacher's eyes had the desert in them now. Wide, empty, without mercy. You want to test your almost. A click sounded. Not a gun. A door. Lena stepped out, voice shaking, but sure. Tommy, come here. Brother Cade's hand lifted, as if to bless, or to signal. Ethan's colt said hello to daylight, smooth as thought. Don't, Ethan told the men. Don't, unless you want to find out what I practice more than praying. Brother Cade's gaze moved from the barrel to Ethan's eyes, and then past him, down the alley, where the street opened like a wound. He weighed time. Men like him always did. Then he smiled that church smile again, calm, patient, like the minute hand on a clock. Stand down, boys, he said. We don't spill blood near the Lord's house. Tommy bolted for Lena, relief tripping his feet. She caught him by the shirt and hauled him close, whispering a mother's prayer with a sister's breath. Brother Cade turned to Ethan. You won't, a boy. Congratulations. Leave town, Ethan said. Now, Marshal, the preacher said. Regrets are like sugar on his tongue. I can't. There's work to do, and I'm owed. Owed by who? By the desert, he said, and the truth of it showed in his teeth. By men like you who think death is a tithe you pay to sleep at night. He stepped back, and the men stepped with him, folding into the dark. When Ethan reached the mouth of the alley, they were gone, swallowed by the town, the way a stone vanishes into deep water. The sheriff was waiting on Ethan's return, because lawmen share a kind of weather sense. Boyd listened and swore under his breath. I'll deputize too, and we'll take him at dawn, he said. Easier to make a case when the town's awake. Ethan shook his head. Dawn's when they sleep. He's already moving. Tonight, I can feel it. Boyd drummed fingers on the desk. Feelings don't stand in court. Neither do corpses, Ethan said. Give me one man with a steady hand. I'll bring you the truth before the sun's on the steeple. Boyd stared at him long enough to count the years on Ethan's face. Then he nodded once. Harris, he called, and a lanky deputy with quiet eyes stepped out of the back like a shadow. Ride here with the marshal. Don't be a hero, be a witness. Harris tipped his hat. Yes, sir. They rode out where the desert starts to forget names. Sage scraped their boots. The moon hung like a coin. A gambler doesn't mean to lose. They found tracks, fresh 5 sets, one roan with a split ear. Ethan felt something unlock in his chest that might have been hope, if he still trusted that word. The trail followed a dry wash toward the hills, then tilted into a narrow canyon that split the land like a lie. Up ahead, a light flickered, small, careful, shuttered. Men's voices ghosted on the rock. Ethan slid from his saddle and gestured. Harris did the same. They crept along the stone, boots finding silence by habit, until the camp lay below them like a secret spilled. 5 men, a wagon, strong boxes sacked like church kneelers, and the preacher, bareheaded now, coat off, sleeves rolled, talking low to a man with a lantern jaw. Tonight, Brother Cade said, we cross through Devil's Gate before dawn, stash the boxes at Cottonwood Sink. Tomorrow we preach forgiveness. Day after, we ride south. The lantern-jawed man, Sykes spit, that lawman sniffing. You seen his eyes? I've seen a lot of men's eyes, Brother Cade said. Most of them blink at the wrong time. This one doesn't, so we don't give him a time. We move now. Sykes grunted agreement. Harris leaned close to Ethan's ear. We got 1 shot at this. Ethan nodded. 2, he whispered. First, the truth. He stood, cupped his hands, and let his voice fall like a hammer. Jed Carraway. The camp snapped to guns like a trap to bait. Brother Cade turned and lifted his face, and the moon sketched the old outlaw on that borrowed skin. At last, it was like seeing a coyote grinning out of a lamb's wool. You wear a dead man's name, he called. I prefer Brother Cade. I prefer liar, Ethan said, but I'll settle for thief. Marshal, Carraway said, conversational as a barber. You brought the sheriff? Just the truth, Ethan answered. And a witness. Carraway's smile thinned. Shoot the witness. The desert took a breath it didn't release. Sykes raised his rifle. Harris rode behind a rock, clean and practiced, and the bullet bit stone where his skull had been. Ethan's coat cleared leather and talked in the language he trusted most. Sykes went down hard, eyes wide with surprise at how quick the world can shrink. Gunfire flowered. The canyon threw the sound back and forth until it wasn't sound anymore, just pressure, just the push and pull of survival. Ethan moved like a man who'd mapped the way out of hell and kept the parchment under his ribs. 2 of Carraway's men dropped. A third ran for the horses, took a bullet in the thigh, screamed like a train whistle. Carraway didn't fire. He watched, calm, handling fear the way gamblers handle queens, lightly, like it's already theirs. When the smoke thinned, it was Ethan's gun and Carraway's eyes across 20 paces of dust. Harris lay breathing, Owen burning, a line above his shoulder, not mortal. The wounded outlaw whimpered. The last one lived because he'd chosen the ground well and the bullets poorly. Carraway stepped forward, empty hands high. Let's talk, Marshal. We've been talking, Ethan said, and thumbed back the hammer. Caraway's lips barely moved. You kill me, the town loses its preacher. They lose their ledgers balanced, their dead buried, their hope on Sundays. You want that blood on your hands? Ethan laughed once, short. You don't get to trade God like a poker chip. Caraway's gaze flicked toward the ridge. He whistled. It wasn't loud, but it had a shape to it, and out of the deeper dark a figure moved, bareheaded, thin, with a coat too big on narrow shoulders. For a second, Ethan's bones forgot how to hold him up. Jonah, he said. The name fell out of him like a coin from a split pocket. The boy on the ridge stopped and lifted both hands, slow, with a sadness old as any desert. He came down the slope like a man climbing into debt. Ethan, he said, brother. The world tilted like whiskey in a glass. The place on the hill with the wooden cross, the empty grave that had haunted Ethan's sleep, the lightning and smoke. The night he'd pulled a body from a burned barn and made it Jonah with his grief because he couldn't bear another answer. Alive, Ethan said, and the word broke on the edges. You're alive. Jonah managed a smile, soft, crooked, the same smile he'd had when they were boys stealing apples. I am, I ran, I ran after the fire you think you buried me in. Caraway found me, or I found him. Doesn't matter. He put a Bible in my hand and a gun in my holster and told me they ain't enemies if you work 'em right. Ethan looked at Caraway without seeing him, then back to Jonah. Why didn't you come home? Jonah shrugged with his whole heart. Because I did wrong, and the wrong grew limbs, and the limbs shook coins from trees, and pretty soon I forgot where home was. Shame's a map with no north. Caraway's voice slid in, sweet and slick. See, Marshal, I'm not just a thief. I'm a savior of lost things. I saved your brother from a poorer man's grave. Ethan lifted his gun 1 inch. Don't say his name again. Jonah stepped between them, hands out. Don't shoot him, Ethan. He made you this, Ethan said. He made you a liar. Jonah nodded, tears sliding quiet as dusk. I was a liar long before he gave me words for it. Caraway's eyes glittered. Let the boy speak truth, Marshal. It's more than most get in this life. Harris groaned, dragging himself to a knee, blood dark on his sleeve. Marshal, he hissed, warning and prayer mixed. Caraway watched the deputy rise, considering. Truce, he said. We walk away. You take your witness and your wound, and the knowledge your brother breathes. I take my wagons. Tomorrow, we'll preach. Ethan looked at Jonah's face and found 100 memories laid out like playing cards. Jonah laughing, Jonah running, Jonah stealing a silver cross and charming a priest into blessing him anyway. Jonah riding out one night and never riding back. I can't let you take those boxes, Ethan said. They ain't yours, and you ain't preaching. Not tomorrow. Caraway sighed, long suffering, always with the law. Fine, we do it the old way. His hand blurred. Not for a gun, for a hidden derringer. Palm flat, snake quick. Ethan saw the glint and moved, but the world moves how it pleases in moments like that. The derringer coughed once. Ethan felt heat graze his side and smelled blood. Jonah's eyes went wide. Then Jonah moved. He wasn't fast enough to be a legend, but he was fast enough to be a brother. He stepped into the bullet meant for Ethan, grabbed Caraway's wrist, and wrenched. The second shot went into the sky where only God counts. Jonah grunted, knee buckling, and Caraway backhanded him aside, drawing his real iron at last. Ethan didn't think. He shot. The Colt's roar filled the canyon with the sound of decisions you can't take back. Caraway staggered, looked surprised for the first time since he'd learned to lie, and fell, dust blooming around him, like a sad flower. Silence came in on cat feet. Ethan stumbled to Jonah and caught him up like a father catches a child. Blood spread beneath his fingers, warm, terrible, familiar. Jonah smiled that old crooked smile and winced. "Always did want you to owe me, big brother. You owe me years," Ethan said, which wasn't the right thing, and all he had. Jonah's breath hitched. "I tried to come back, once. Stood at the end of the street, saw you in the window cleaning your gun like a prayer. I thought, I ain't a man he'd bless, so I left." "You were wrong," Ethan whispered. Jonah's eyes drifted to the stars, as if he'd misplaced something up there. "Tell the Lord, if you see him first, that I wanted better." "I'll tell him you were brave," Ethan said. "Lie for me?" Jonah asked, grinning a little, because he never could help it. "Not a lie," Ethan said, "just the kind of truth that hurts less." Jonah's hand found Ethan's, squeezed once, the old signal they'd used on long nights, when wolves sang and boys pretended they weren't afraid. Then the hand loosened and fell, and the night took him, gentle for once. Ethan sat with him a while. Harris stood guard with his jaw set and his wounded arm held tight, the way a man holds on to faith when it slips. The wind moved through the mesquite and said nothing. The desert, for all its talk, is good at silence when men have nothing left to say. At dawn, they buried Caraway in the wash, far from sanctified ground. No preacher, no words, just stones, and the knowledge that some men plant nothing worth tending. Ethan set a rock on the cairn and said to the air more than to the dead, "No grave for a liar." It wasn't scripture. It was enough. They carried Jonah to a hill that overlooked Dust Hollow, a place where the morning spilled like gold over the wooden roofs, and a man could see every mistake he'd made and still want to live. Ethan carved a new cross with his knife, slow, careful, until the wood felt right under his palm. He cut Jonah's name this time. Names matter. They keep the wind honest. Lena, Tommy came, hats in hands, faces washed clean by the kind of tears desert folk rarely spend. The sheriff stood with them, and even he couldn't keep his eyes from shining. Harris did the reading, voice rough but steady, psalms rubbing against the morning like flint. When the words were done, Ethan spoke the way men do when they've run out of all the ones they planned. "My brother was a liar," he said, and folks shifted, because truth in public is a thing you lean away from. He was also stubborn and brave where his courage found him. He made bad friends and worse choices, but he walked back into the fire for me. I'll spend the rest of my life paying proper for that debt. He set his hand on the cross. Jonah Cross, beloved by a fool, who should have said it sooner. The town left him then, because sorrow is a door, at least once. Ethan stayed until the sun stood high and hot, and then he went down into Dust Hollow, where work waited. The church bells rang that Sunday. Not because Brother Cade called them, he didn't call anyone, but because Lena did, and Sheriff Boyd, and half a town that needed to remind itself it could stand without a liar's spine. They sat on hard pews, and Harris climbed the dais, awkward as a colt on a slick morning, and he read from the good book in a voice that didn't know how to lie even if it tried. After the service, folks lined up at the church door with tin cups and sacks of flour and coins that had seen more hands than most children. Sheriff Boyd set a box by the steps. "For widows," he said, for orphans, for those owed by men who thought debts were prayers. Ethan stood at the back with his hat in his hands and the wind on his neck. Lena brought Tommy over, nudged the boy forward like a mare nudges a colt toward water. "Thank you," Tommy mumbled. "Come see me tomorrow," Ethan said. "I'll set you to honest guard. We got a wagon to take to Cottonwood Sink and bring back what ain't ours yet." Tommy blinked. I mean, we returning what thieves stole," Ethan said. "And we're doing it in daylight." The boy grinned, small and fierce. "Yes, sir." Ethan watched them go. The bells stopped. The day widened. The desert waited, patient as always. He rode out alone in the afternoon, up to the hill where the crosses stood. Two now, one for a lie he'd believed, one for a truth he'd almost missed. He touched Jonah's name, the letters cut sure and deep, and he said the kind of prayer men like him can manage. Nothing fancy, nothing long. Keep him, he told the sky. "I'll do the rest down here." The wind picked up and ran its fingers through the grass, and the sound it made was almost like an answer. Ethan put his hat back on and swung up into the saddle. The bay stamped once. They turned toward the wash and the trail beyond, where men still cheated and women still prayed, and boys tried to be better than the world begged them to be. Justice isn't a gun or a gavel. It's a road. You walk it until your boots wear thin, and when it forks, you take the turn that hurts less for others, more for you. That's the math of a good man. Ethan Cross rode on. The desert kept its secrets, but not from him, not anymore.